UFC 301 has just taken place with Anthony Smith pulling the first round gilly, the King of Rio Jose Aldo coming back strong, and Pantoja digging deep over 5 rounds. I'll be giving you my recap for the whole entire card and its best moments, kicking it off with Alessandro Costa versus Kevin Borjas. Fantastic performance from Alessandro Costa. He was obviously going up against Borjas, who has kind of got that striking sniper style, utilizes his jab a lot, utilizes movement a lot, and Costa really did a good job of nullifying his style by just destroying that front leg with some leg kicks. He was able to chew up that front leg to the point where Borjas wasn't really countering or jabbing effectively, and Borjas' best weapon is his jab. And it then stopped him from being able to switch stance, which Borjas doesn't really switch stance anyways, which was an issue from the start. And, I mean, we look at it from a ground game specialist to striking specialist matchup. We look at Borjas, and he is obviously the great striker out of the two of them, the more composed technical striker. However, when you have Alessandro Costa, who is chopping down that leg, that is then stopping the best part of his game, which is obviously the striking. Now, when we look at Alessandro Costa, which when it comes to his grappling, he was obviously able to get Borjas to the ground after chewing up his leg and then being able to get really aggressive because Borjas wasn't able to counter effectively. So once Alessandro actually got inside and landed some big shots and then hurt Borjas and got him to the ground, as I said in the predictions, the way that Borjas was going to the ground was by getting hurt, and kudos to Alessandro Costa, he hurt him. And when it got to the point when it got to the ground, Borjas was completely outclassed by him, and as soon as it did hit the ground, it was just over. And Alessandro Costa did a fantastic job. Moving up to Ismael Bonfim versus Vinc Pichel. Now, I don't think this fight was actually as dominant as I thought it was going to be. Obviously, Bonfim didn't get that finish that I thought he was going to get. And that comes down to, you got to give props to Pichel. He was extremely durable. He kept out of danger a fair bit of the time. And early in the first round, he was doing a very good job, just like Alessandro Costa did to Borjas. He was utilizing his leg kicks to disrupt Bonfim's striking. He was utilizing those leg kicks to really stop Bonfim's rhythm and to stop him finding and utilizing that range of his. He stopped him from getting into his own range, and they was fighting at Pichel's range for a fair bit of that first round. But as soon as it got to about the later end of the first round, Bonfim then started really finding his range. And at that point, Bonfim was tearing up Pichel's body. He was starting to put on that striking clinic. I mean, he was outlanding him with leg kicks then at that point as well, ripping him to the body. And, I mean, he was using very, very good combinations throughout the fight. And it was mainly, I would say, his best strike was that lead hook to the body. And it was very evident that Pichel was getting hurt by that. And that was just obviously going more towards Bonfim from the judge's point of view. And yeah, overall, Bonfim just completely outclassed Vinc Pichel on the feet. And if there's any takeaway for Vinc Pichel in the fight, I definitely think he should have utilized more clinch work and more dirty boxing within the clinch. I think that would have been his best case scenario to pull out any sort of win in this one. Moving up to Dione Barbosa versus Ernesta Kareckaite. Now, I'm not going to lie, start off, I think this is a bit of bullshit decision, to be honest. I had Barbosa winning the first round pretty evidently. Her striking looked pretty decent in the first round. More than I've seen of any of her striking on the regional scene or obviously on the Contender Series. So I was pretty impressed by it. And she was also faster than Ernesta in the first round as well. But as soon as that first round ended, after Barbosa, had the advantage on the striking and definitely on the ground as well, Ernesta, I think, just took over in the second and third rounds. I mean, Ernesta's cardio was really coming into play there. I mean, she's a former swimmer, and she's been to the distance multiple times, had close decisions, But I mean, her cardio just does not wane, and she has amazing cardio for the amount of output she actually puts into her fights. And I think that was just becoming more and more evident as the fight went on. You just see the cardio difference, the gap getting bigger and bigger between Dione and Ernesta as the fight was going on. When it came to that third round, she was stuffing all of Dione's takedowns. I mean, Dione landed 2 out of 11 takedowns, and the one takedown Ernesta actually landed, she succeeded in actually getting. Now, that being said as well, I mean, Ernesta was actually very defensively sound with the submission attempts from Dione. Dione had her in some pretty bad spots, but yeah, she defended them all. Now, I'm not saying that it's a complete robbery or anything like that, but I definitely think it was pretty clear that Ernesta won the second and the third round. So, and yeah, ultimately she was utilizing her range very well in the second and third round. She was popping those 1-2s. She was putting on more damage. She outlanded Dione in the fight as well. So yeah, I was definitely surprised by that decision. I don't think it's a robbery, but I think it was a pretty fairly clear win for Ernesta, Kareckaite. Moving up, Mauricio Ruffy versus Jamie Mullarkey. Now, man, this was tough. This was tough to see. I mean, the differences in skill and just physical abilities, it was just so evident. I mean, he had a huge speed difference there. I mean, his jabs were just landing all day. And I mean, overall, the performance was completely flawless. He had pinpoint accuracy. His composure was amazing. His distance management was on point. And every time Mullarkey was coming into pressure, he was just slipping out of the way of everything. I mean, Mullarkey landed 14 strikes overall. Like, it was, and most of the time Mullarkey was really trying to get aggressive and pressure, and he just couldn't land anything. And I mean, you look at it from all angles for Ruffy as well. I mean, he's got that striking from all angles. He had a really nice scissor sweep in there. He didn't get the takedown successfully from it, but I mean, it just shows the kind of arsenal and the freestyle kind of style that he does have. So it can keep a lot of opponents guessing. And I mean, just when we look at Mullarkey, just could not find his range to save his life, and I'm pretty worried. I think he's going to get cut after this, or maybe one more fight. At least I'm not entirely sure when his contract's finished, but when that contract's finished, I don't think he's going to get extended. And I mean, coming down to Ruffy though, I mean, he is just a serious problem, and I think he's just an amazing addition to that lightweight division. Moving up to Drakkar close versus Joaquim Silva. Now, this fight was pretty decent. I mean, it was very clinch heavy, especially on Drakkar's side. It was a very gritty fight, similar to the Brenner vs Orolbai fight. I mean, from close, I mean, you look at his clinch work in that fight. I mean, that was really spearheading it. He was taking over pretty much every round with it, really trying to drag out Joaquim's power. And I mean, he just had his striking accuracy, that 55% striking accuracy he had before this fight. I mean, he was really putting it to good use. And it was very important that he did it, because he was gassing out hard towards that third round. And I mean, yeah, he just in terms of that striking, I mean, he was just better on the feet. A lot more output. A lot of the strikes he used, he made count. Whereas when we had Silva, I feel like he was panicking a little bit. He was getting to that point where he was trying to find that one big shot. He wasn't setting anything up with a jab. He wasn't putting combinations together. He was just trying to shoot for that right hand. And when we look at Silva as well, he did pick it up in the third round. He almost caught close in the guillotine. And when we look in that third round, the fact that he was exhausted, I mean, I thought he was done. I thought he was completely done. He was breathing so heavy, and I thought it looked pretty tight. Obviously, we look at Joaquim Silva, and the commentary stated it actually as well, is he just didn't utilize his hips when he was trying to go for the guillotine, so it gave Close a bit more breathing room. And I mean, that being said, he couldn't actually get it successfully, and Close slammed him slammed himself tighter into the guillotine, making that mistake, and still couldn't secure it. So, I mean, that could probably say that Silva was pretty gassed out himself. But, I mean, yeah, amazing win for Drakkar. Close, very gritty fight. I think he's 8-1 coming through the UFC, aside from Beneil Dariush. And, I mean, yeah, he's going to be popping up those rankings for sure, so it's going to be really good for him in the lightweight division. Moving up to Myktybek, Orolbai versus Elves, Brenner. Now, I think this fight did go pretty much how I predicted it to go. Myktybek, overall, I think is just the better fighter, especially the way he was using his ground transitions, his wrestling transitions. I mean, he was just able to find his positions without being threatened very, very well. There were points where he did make some pretty low fight IQ mistakes, and towards, I think it was the end of the second round, Elvis had him in full mount. So, I mean, if that was a minute longer, honestly, Myktybek Orolbai could have lost. But that being said, though, Myktybek pulled off some big shots, and put Elvis on skates for a little bit. Believe he popped him with a 1-2, and when the 2 hit, it just slapped straight across his chin, and he was wobbling bad. I thought he was going to be finished. But yeah, Orolbai was really heavy on those takedowns. He was really wanting to drag that fight out. Probably could assume, especially from the heat of Brazil, I think a lot of fighters were getting affected by it. And I think it was really draining down that stamina. And I mean, Orolbai landed less than half of his takedowns. He landed 5 out of 17 takedowns. So Brenner was doing pretty well to stuff them. I mean, he had good movement. He was doing very well. But I just think, as I said, I think Orolbai is just the better fighter overall. And as I thought, I mean, Brenner did pick it up late. His cardio did come through, and it was slowly overtaking Orolbai's, I think. But too little, too late, and it just wasn't enough in the end. So, I mean, just between the two of them, I mean, you look at both of them, they're both so young, they're both extremely good, and give them 3-4 years, they're both going to be, I think they'll both be in the top 15 of the lightweight division. Moving up, Karolina Kowalkiewicz versus Iasmin Lucindo. Now, it's pretty tough to see, you know, Karolina lose that 4-fight win streak at 38 years old. I mean, it'd be good to see her make some sort of run. She's been in the game for ages. She fought Joanna for the title. She's always been pretty good in the UFC. But I mean, when we look at this fight, it went very similar to the way my predictions were placed. Karolina just did not utilize that much head movement, and then obviously with that she was getting hit, and by getting hit she was struggling, especially against Lucindo with those power shots. Yeah, Lucindo was looking very good. She was just stronger in all areas, and especially in that strength department as well. She had very good head control at points when they were clinching, and ultimately probably the best thing for Iasmin in this fight was that she just showed a great consistent pace across the 3 rounds, especially against someone like Karolina, who has a very consistent output and forward pressure. She just showed, a very, very good pace and just didn't slow down throughout the whole 15 minutes. And ultimately, it's very good for Lucindo to get that win over a former title challenging veteran. And it's amazing for her to get that experience at 22 years old. And moving up to our controversial feature prelim fight, Joanderson Brito versus Jack Shaw. Now, as I predicted within this fight, for as long as we actually had the fight, the big issue was the strength. It was in the strength department for Jack Shaw, just not as strong as Brito. Don't get me wrong, Jack Shaw had pretty decent boxing in the fight, but Joanderson Brito's clinch work and his overall strength within that first round and that little bit of the second that we got was just too much for Shaw. And I think just overall the strength was realistically just overtaking the fight. Now, obviously, the TKO doctor stoppage was a bit controversial. Joanderson landed 22 out of 23 leg strikes to Jack Shaw's 1. So Joanderson was very proactive in the leg kick game as it was. So I do understand the doctor's stoppage behind it for multiple reasons. One being that reason that I stated in terms of Joanderson is already proactive in those leg kicks. So he's going to be targeting it and damaging it a lot more. And number 2, which is which obviously goes with it, is when the doctors, I mean, I don't think the doctors had to bloody finger his knee, or finger the injury, but you could tell that his leg was in it had a bit of a weird bump and a curve to it, so it looked like his shin bone was at least cracked or something like that. So obviously we don't want the doctors are probably thinking we don't want another bloody Conor McGregor versus Dustin Poirier 3 scenario and having a bloody snapped leg in half. So I think it's a fair enough decision from the doctors to make that call, but I do understand the frustration from Jack Shaw. I mean, it's not like he was doing terribly or anything like that. I do think he was going to lose the fight, but by no means he was getting absolutely destroyed or anything like that, and it's definitely frustrating for him. I mean, it's an injury he's going to have to heal up from, and yeah, it's also frustrating in the sense of when he got up from speaking with the doctors, he was walking around completely fine. But at the end of the day, you do have to understand that, I mean, if it is a cracked shin and Joanderson is aiming for the shin, it's going to crack even more and then possibly snap the bone. So that's fair enough. Understand the frustration for Jack Shaw. But, I mean, when we look at that win for Joanderson Brito, again, just giving him more and more momentum, and he's going to get a top 15 in no time. Also, just before we get onto the main card, I think this would be a good time to talk about the William Gomis versus Gene Silva fight. Now, it's pretty rough. It's like when you see Gomis on those scales at 143 pounds, he's 3 pounds under the 146 limit. He looked like dog shit. He vomited before the weigh-ins, and then he basically got carried off the scales after weighing in. He was dripping, his shirt was pretty much dripping with sweat, and it's just a no-brainer that fight's called off. It was a very close fight as it was. He was obviously the underdog in the fight, but I do think that he would have won. But coming down to the fight that it would have been, fighting Gene Silva, a powerful, fast striker who has good counter striking, that lead left hand, if anything like that hit, especially with Gomis not being able to hydrate properly, it would have been bad. He would have been finished, and he's still got to recover from this as well. I do understand the frustration from Gene Silva in this fight. Obviously, he doesn't get to fight in Brazil with the Fighting Nerds team with Caio Borralho and Mauricio Ruffy as well, or Ruffy. So it is frustrating, definitely on both sides. But yeah, when it comes to Gomis specifically, it's just got to be some really big mess up with the camp. Obviously, the scales have been off, and they just haven't been weighing properly throughout their whole camp in terms of cutting that weight for that last week, which is a huge issue. And yeah, I think it, without a doubt, it's the right decision that he didn't fight. I mean, that could ultimately, butterfly effect, just completely screw up his whole career if he loses that if he lost that, not only lost that fight with that weight cut, but sustained damage with that much weight being cut and not being able to rehydrate properly. Yeah, it could lead to long-lasting damage for Gomis. So yeah, definitely fair that the fight was called off. Moving on to the main card, Caio Borralho versus Paul Craig. Yeah, rough for Paul Craig. When we look at Borralho, I mean, obviously the man we mostly got to focus on in this fight, managed his distance extremely well, found his jab pretty much straight off the bat. He was just so technically advanced over Paul Craig on the feet, and his fight IQ as well. When he was dropping Paul Craig, he would not get overzealous, he wouldn't overcommit, he wouldn't try and go for the ground and pound, and he would let him back up, obviously to give himself the advantage, which was the exact perfect thing he should be doing. And when we look at it, he got a flush knee. He got a very flush knee in the second round and dropped him badly, but then let him back up and then hit. I believe he just missed the one, but then came through and just destroyed him with the two. With that straight two, knocked him straight out. I mean, beautiful, vicious KO from KO Bahalio. And he's already put the middleweight division on notice. I mean, this is just putting the cherry on the top. And yeah, I'm not going to be surprised after this, as he was ranked 13 and Craig was ranked 12. He'll be getting in the top 10 after this one for sure. Moving up to another demolition site, we have Michel Pereira versus Ihor Potieria. I mean, yeah, just as I predicted, this was absolute domination. Completely overwhelmed Ihor Potieria. I mean, there was only like 3 sequences in the fight, really. I mean, we've got the point where Pereira strikes him, hits him with the 2, and then drops him. Then Pereira controversially backflips and knees him to the face, which, when they were going through the replay of it, I do think when they went to a certain angle where I could see a bit better, it did look like it hit the shoulder, not so much the face. But then from the first angle they did, it looked like it may have hit the face. So it's hard to say realistically, but I mean, he got the win at the end of the day. And when he by getting the win, getting up, and that guillotine was so tight, arched back, but it was trying to rip his head off. It was a fantastic performance, and yeah, I mean, it's rough for Ihor, but I honestly didn't think he stood much of a chance in this fight, especially with, as I said, the only way that I felt like Ihor was really going to get advantage in this fight is if he could maintain his distance straight away, but Michel's too strong, too explosive, and his movement's just too good, especially with that capoeira style, obviously backflipping onto people's faces. He is going to continue to do damage in the middleweight division for sure. Moving up to Anthony, my multi-killer Smith versus Vitor Petrino. There's not much to say about this one. I mean, fantastic for Anthony Smith. Secured the guillotine, was extremely tight, and the moment I could tell that it was extremely tight is when Vitor, he was going to go for the slam, but halfway down when he was going for the slam, he took his hand away to then frame. He took his hand away to frame on the ground to soften the landing, because he was already thinking about how he's going to have to hand fight and get out of it because it was so tight already. And I mean, that was obvious because he tapped him out pretty much instantly. Vitor was gone. As I said, yeah, there's not much to say about it, really. I mean, for Anthony Smith, an amazing fight for him, and it allows him to stay in the game. And probably the best part about it was we got a rare fuck up from Bruce Buffer. Bruce Buffer announced Petrino as the winner, saying, and I believe it was 10-0 and still undefeated. And then Smith's face just completely dropped. And Bruce is like, oh, shit. Oh, well, rewind. So, yeah, ultimately, I mean, fantastic for Smith. Not so good for Vitor and not so good for Bruce Buffer. Moving up to the co-main event, Jose Aldo, the King of Rio versus Jonathan Martinez. Now, you got to give it to him. 37 years old, who cares? He looked sharp. I mean, he landed better shots in the first, and which I said in the predictions, I thought it was going to be a bit of a seesaw. I thought, well, Jonathan Martinez does start pretty slow. We've seen that in his past fights. And then Jose Aldo usually fades towards the end. So we're going to be looking at Jose starting strong, and then Jonathan Martinez finishing strong. But when it came to that first round, as predicted, I mean, Aldo was getting the better. He was landing very, very good shots, but Aldo was able to find his range almost instantly. He was getting... his right hand was landing all day, and his lead left hook to the body is just a thing of beauty. It was fantastic. He was ripping Martinez's body like there was no tomorrow. But when we look at Martinez, I will say he was pressuring well as I thought in the third round. It was out of desperation more so, but it was just too difficult for him because Aldo's a much higher caliber striker than him, and his stamina just did not falter at all. It did not wane at all. He was looking fantastic in the third round. Did not slow down or anything, and yeah, Aldo just put on a clinic. Great overall. Tight boxing, cardio, He checked a lot of leg kicks too. His leg kicks, yeah, oh my goodness. They were fantastic. I mean, like, he would return all of Jonathan Martinez's kicks, and I mean, he outlanded Jonathan Martinez with them as well. So yeah, ultimately just a fantastic performance for him overall. And you know, Jonathan Martinez was pretty, you could tell he's pretty down towards the end of the fight, but again, he's pretty young as well, and I mean, he's literally fighting a GOAT. So I mean, you know, it's onwards and upwards for him from here. And when it comes to Jose Aldo, I'm not gonna lie, like, obviously he's going out on a win, and it's in Rio as well. So I do wish he retired on that high note, being in his own country. But I mean, if he thinks he can make another run and he's still looking like that, you know, who's to say that he couldn't? So yeah, definitely an amazing co-main event overall. Moving up to our main event, Alexandre Pantoja versus Steve Erceg. Now, you got to give it to him. It's that veteran spirit. Pantoja played a very, very smart game. And he played a smart game from the get-go, very early on. He had great transitions. I think the ground transitions in this fight for Pantoja is what won him the fight. The fact that Erceg is a second-degree black belt and was extremely defensively sound, Pantoja was still one step ahead of him on the ground pretty much at all times. And it allowed him to land some pretty good ground and pound, which Erceg did adjust. As they were going through ground transitions from first round to second round to third round, onwards and onwards, Erceg was taking less and less damage on the ground, whereas in the first round he took the most. And yeah, I mean, Pantoja, he was not only fantastic in the grappling exchanges, but the leg kicks. He put on the leg kicks very, very early on in the fight, which he was obviously utilizing to try and break Erceg's stance, which is the best thing that he could do, because Erceg's best strength, especially against Pantoja, is his boxing, is his technical boxing. And by taking away that lead leg, he was using a lot of outside leg kicks. So especially when he's using the outside leg kicks, it's going to throw Erceg's jab off, which it was doing a fair bit when he obviously throws and the leg kicks at the same time. But when we look at that, obviously chopping that front leg down for a boxer, that's going to take away from your power to drive through. It's going to take away from your speed, and it's going to take, ultimately, if it's taking away from your power and speed, it's most likely going to take away from your accuracy as well, which it was effectively doing. Erceg, he obviously landed the best strike of the fight, which was that elbow, when they were kind of more so in that clinch range, and he was kind of against the cage. Fantastic elbow, sliced Pantoja open. And I'm not sure if I'm wrong on this, but I believe that it was Pantoja that felt like he was about to vomit just after that round finished, after he got that cut. Now, obviously, we don't know if it's down to that gash or if it was down to the heat. That was around the third or the fourth round. And it was seen in the third to the fourth round with Pantoja. He does start to slow down a bit. But he goes like rounds 1, 2, and 3 really hard. Third to fourth, he drops. And then round 5, he pushes up again, which he did in this fight. He did it in the Brandon Moreno fight as well. When we look at Erceg, I mean, Pantoja, obviously fantastic. He deserved the win, without a doubt. But when we look at Erceg, fantastic reversals, very defensively sound on the ground. As I said, did not take that much damage. And his confidence was growing as the fight went on, which I was very surprised about. I mean, he has no experience in a fourth round or higher, and his best round was the fourth round. He looked fantastic in the fourth round. It's when he landed his best shots, and he clear, concise won that fourth round. That's where obviously we can probably attribute that partly to Erceg gaining that confidence and then crossing over with Pantoja gassing around that time as well. And yeah, you've got to give it to Erceg as well. His gas tank was fantastic. He's 6 years younger than Pantoja. He's early into the game. It's his fourth fight in the UFC, and he took the most dominant flyweight, obviously aside from DJ, who's not here anymore. He took the most dominant flyweight champion dominant flyweight fighter to a pretty close decision. Obviously, we'll look at that 5th round. Now, when it comes to the 5th round, Erceg had Pantoja. Up until he got that takedown, he secured a very nice takedown, like beautiful timing on it, locked his hands, swept his feet, gone. But Pantoja's sprawls, his transitions, the way he's able to utilize his reversals is just it's literally the best part of his game. He is world class at it. And Pantoja got a beautiful Granby roll in that 5th round after Erceg took him down. As soon as Erceg took him down, Granby rolled straight out of it for the reversal and then controlled him basically for the pretty much rest of the round, which he then took that round. Now, I've seen a lot online where people are saying that the fight should have been won by Erceg, that Erceg should have got it, and people are saying it's not absolutely not a robbery. But yeah, when we look at the fight, I mean, when you look at it round by round, I would honestly say it's fair to say 48-47 for Pantoja, but a lot of people are thinking that 49-46 is ridiculous, but I don't think it is, to be honest. I probably had the fight 49-46. Depends on the 3rd round. I would have had it 1st round Pantoja, 2nd round Pantoja, 3rd round Pantoja / Erceg, could have gone either way. 4th round definitely Erceg, and then with that control, with his transitions on the ground, and honestly Erceg did not land a whole lot in that 5th round. I got it, like, just transitionally, positionally, you got to give that 5th round to Pantoja, seriously. And I mean, yeah, that's where I would see a 49-46, but 100% can understand a 48-47. But overall, yeah, Pantoja won the fight and he deserves it. But when it comes to Erceg, there's absolutely nothing to be ashamed about with his performance. As I said, 4th fight in the UFC, title fight against the best in the division, and took him to a decision and had the best strikes in the fight. And I'll say it now, Erceg is the best technical striker in the division right now. He is fantastic. He's on par, obviously, with if Alex Perez is in form like he was on Fight Night last weekend, then yeah, possibly up to that. He's better than that standard, but on a more consistent basis. But yeah, just honestly a fantastic performance from Erceg, and obviously it shows why Pantoja is the flyweight champion. Moving on to our fight card awards, starting with our fighter to watch, I'm going to have to give it to Mauricio Ruffy, or Ruffy, I don't know, one of them. But yeah, when we look at him, my goodness, he literally, I mean, I gotta say, I'll probably agree with a lot of people saying that he looks like a Conor McGregor V2. The bladed stance, how dynamic he is with his strikes. I mean, DC said it as well. He really has that stylistic similarity to Conor McGregor. And I mean, with this fight, he just looked extremely dynamic. He looked fantastic. And I mean, overall, I think he's just a very exciting addition to the lightweight division. Now, moving on, we have the finish of the night. I've got to give it to Michel Pereira. I think just out of pure dominance, I mean, there's argue for Caio Borralho and for Anthony Smith, and obviously for Ruffy as well. But I think when we look at pure dominance, Michel Pereira just, like, they did not belong in the same octagon. Like, he just destroyed him, completely outclassed him everywhere, and put him out unconscious with the guillotine as well. Just ultimately just annihilated him. Like, him and Borralho are going to be extremely dangerous for the middleweight division, that's for sure. Moving up to the 3rd fight card moment, my best card moment in 3rd place, I have Anthony Smith as the underdog win. Screwed up my multi, but I mean, look, who cares? Fair enough, you know, I mean, him at his age beating an absolute hype train who is humongous. I mean, yeah, he did a fantastic job, stayed calm, composed, collected, got lifted up like it was nothing, and just made sure he positioned himself correctly and got an extremely tight guillotine. And adding in there to give it the 3rd place, I mean, we got to put in that Bruce Buffer fuck up, right? I mean, you know, Bruce has pretty rare fuck ups, but at the moment that Bruce realized that he said the wrong name and then just like tracked back and then went back to it, like it It was a funny moment. Moving up to second place, got to give it to Mauricio Hua for getting the Hall of Fame status. Getting inducted into the Hall of Fame. I mean, it's awesome to see. He got it at Rio as well, in Brazil. And I mean, he completely deserves it. He's a true legend of the MMA game. He was an absolute freak of nature in Pride. And I mean, he did well in the UFC, even though I think Mauricio Hua was definitely like Cody Garbrandt, definitely peaked early in his career. But I mean, it doesn't really matter. He was an absolute savage. He did some fantastic things in Pride. Had an amazing fight against Dan Henderson as well in 2018. Yeah, just completely deserved it. And moving up to number 1, got to give it to Jose Aldo returning and getting that win. I mean, it does look like he's going to continue fighting, and I mean, if he's putting on performances like that, you cannot blame him at all. But I mean, I do wish. I mean, it'd be a nice swan song for him to go out in Rio, getting that win. Obviously, didn't get the finish, but it's more so to show that, like, you know, he's the king there and he's still got it. I mean, he put on a striking clinic and was fantastic. And so, yeah, ultimately, pretty good fight card overall. And if you enjoyed the video, please like, comment, subscribe for more MMA content, and I'll catch you in the next one.